I just hate to tell you, but if it's what we think it is, why, there's just not much we can do for you. So I'm sitting there soaking up that information, and about that time, here comes the other doctor in the room waving these papers. Oh, we've got your labs back. You have large diffuse B-cell non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Sometimes we cure those. We can cure that. He was very positive. So I'm sitting there with two doctors, you know, the death doctor and the life doctor. And I just looked at him, and these are the exact words I used. I started laughing, and I said, well, which one of you Yeh-hoos am I supposed to believe? And the surgeon deferred to the oncologist, you know, the fellow that had the tests. So that's the way it's been. I can remember when it came back. I came back, I guess it was in 2010, and went to the doctor's office after getting a scan, and he says, well, Mr. Nickel, the cancer's back. And I said, shit. And he said, shit. And that was the two words that we said. And then it came down, well, what's next? What's the next therapy? You know, it's like, oh, we fixed your head gasket and and it's still leaking oil and water. You know, well then, what's the next step? You know, so it was like that. I've been very lucky with the different therapies. I haven't been particularly, you know, deathly ill with them yet. But I just in July, actually early August, when I came back from India, I was told that it's back again for the third time, and that's when they told me the 6-month thing. But we'll see. And the 6-month prognosis was based on doing nothing, and they have decided to give me some chemotherapy, and they're looking to do another type of stem cell transplant. So that's the whole story. As far as fear is concerned, I was in the hospital with the first transplant in July of 2010, and I got a blood infection, and I got really, really ill to the point where I was freezing and they couldn't get me warm, and I couldn't breathe. You know, I was really fighting for breath. And I can remember asking the nurse, you know, there again, it's that curiosity, that living life as a question. I says, am I dying? I was more curious than I was afraid. And it wasn't because I'm this brave person. I can remember being terrified when I was young. I can remember crawling under barbed wire with explosives going off around me, machine gun fire going over my head in what they call the infiltration course in basic training in the Army. And I can remember being very, very frightened. And it happened to be the same day that President Johnson came out with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, you know, saying they were going to take another 100,000 troops to Vietnam. I didn't have to go. But, so anyway, that's the story. If you want the story of Bob and dealing with cancer, that's it. You know. Yes.
I happen to work with cancer patients and has for 30 years.
Okay,
I'm
can you
a
hold this
radiation
up?
Therapist,
Oh yeah.
and I worked at Cedars, and I worked all over LA, and I work up here now.
Oh great.
But I notice with my patients over all these years that I've seen a lot of miracles, and I've seen, and it had a lot to do with the way that they view themselves and the way their self-inquiry. And I found that the ones that did the best are usually the ones who really looked into themselves and who they were. They seem to have, they pull out of it better.
Great.
And they're the ones who seem to pull out of it more, and I don't know. Children do very well because they have that open mind, and they aren't really getting caught up in it, and they may not look into themselves as much, but they also don't get caught up in it as much. And it seems like lessons come to them, and they just can flow with them better. And I don't know if you felt that way, if you've felt that.
I don't think about it very often. If
Yeah.
I'm asked, I think about it, but I don't walk around with a voice in my head talking
Yeah.
about cancer all the time.
I think that's what the children I've treated.
Right.
That's the way it was. They don't think about it,
Right.
and they do very well.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I see people who dwell on it and they blame people for it, and
Yeah.
and those are the ones that
Who can
really,
we sue?
Yeah, or who, you know, they even beat me up sometimes, like, you caused this. It's like,
Right.
well, no, really I didn't, but
Right. Well, people are really willing to export cause for any upset they're feeling.
yeah,
That's the thing. It happens almost universally in an unexamined mind.
yeah,
You know, the mind that says, oh, you know, the mind that will basically say, you know, this happened to me before, now you're doing it, or this, you know, this type of thing. You know, they can't distinguish between the past and now, so everything gets built up for them till they're just scared to death or very reactive to anything that reminds them of whatever happened in the past.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting, the children we did bone marrow transplants on 30 years ago, we found the adults, we couldn't really pull them out of it that well, so we got to the point at City of Hope where I was working, we would only do them on children.
The
Because
transplant, bone marrow transplants?
At that
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
because children were the ones that would pull out of it so easy.
Yeah.
And they come in there and they were just happy, and they,
Yeah. Now they're doing the stem cell, which is
Yeah.
a lot easier on the patient than,
Yeah.
than having holes poked in your pelvis or
Oh, yeah.
femurs, you know,
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, so,
Mm.
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. Yeah, and I'm back again to this willingness for the truth to be the truth. You know, I don't have to confabulate some idea that some world that I can live in which somehow the cancer is gone, or this or that, or imagine this or imagine that. I'm just in this willingness, there's peace.
but I noticed you're still doing the chemo,
Yeah.
because this is what I've had the biggest problem with here,
Mhm.
is because I've always felt that, you know, God presents different ways of healing, and I've seen miracles occur before, but yet I've also seen the opposite, where we have a lot of holistic people in this community, and they won't do what's necessary at times, and to me it seems like they're hurting their body, because they're not using what's available.
Right. Well, living in Ojai, California, you know, there's an awful lot of the New Age and
Yeah.
type of medicine and stuff that's going on, holistic medicine and alternative medicine, I guess.
Which I believe in that too.
Yeah,
As-
I think it's useful, but the way the doctors explained it to me made perfect sense. Says you can take that stuff, you know, but we have absolutely no idea. There's never been any research, you know, about how that affects the chemotherapy that you're taking. And I know I have a friend who has multiple myeloma, and he discovered everybody was saying, drink green tea, drink green tea, drink green tea, and it turned out that it was blocking the efficacy of some of his chemotherapy
Well,
drugs.
that's what's been happening here in this
Right.
community. I have a patient right now that
Right.
went to nutritionists here in town, and they were telling her to take this and that. Well, it was actually helping the cancer cells to reproduce, rather than letting us do what we need to do to knock them out and then build the patient back
Right.
up.
Yeah, so we're on the same page with all of this. You know, I'm trying to eat a variety of healthy food, and that's it. So thank you.
So, wonder if you would comment on the fact that each one of us had, like, there's no difference to me that we're all going to die. We're all going to, you know, it's like life that's guaranteed that
Right.
we have an exit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any difference if somebody says your exit date is now or at some time later.